Well folks, Willie here. Welcome back to a very windy Northern Ireland day. Today we're going to be talking about log splitters and answering the question, should you buy one? So this splitter is a Hartnett. It's 40-ton max axe. It's a horizontal and diagonal log splitter. Whenever I was thinking about buying this splitter, there's stacks and stacks of videos, fantastic videos on what type of splitter you should buy, all the different features. But there wasn't really any videos, just so much covering should you actually buy one, and if so, when should you buy one? At what stage in your life does it make sense to upgrade and buy yourself a log splitter? So that's just what I want to cover today. Hopefully it'll be a help to somebody if you're thinking about these kind of things. So one of the first subjects that we'll talk about is using a hydraulic log splitter enjoyable? And I guess the people that are asking that question are the kind of people that like to split wood with an axe. So enjoyment is a very personal thing. It's very hard for me to say, you know, the things that you enjoy are the things that I enjoy, and whether you'll definitely enjoy something or not. But on the face of it, let me assure you, running a hydraulic log splitter is more enjoyable than using an axe. You get all the fun of splitting the logs, and you can keep doing it hour after hour. Stuff that would normally totally take away the enjoyment of splitting with an axe, that you end up getting a real sense of satisfaction whenever your splitter just chews through it. Stuff that you know you wouldn't be fit to split yourself. Here's a piece here. If you saw that sitting in the ground and you were working with your axe, you'd probably leave it to the end and you'd be absolutely dreading it. Whereas with the likes of this, you don't need to fear it. And if that doesn't put a smile in your face, I don't know what will. Let's just see if we can just split her completely in half, right through the middle here. Nuts and everything. That is the beauty of the splitter. Okay, so I guess I've probably said enough about the first section. In terms of enjoyment, 100% a log splitter is even more enjoyable with an axe. For the majority of us, let's face it, this decision is fundamentally going to come down to the money side of things. An axe, hold on, I'll get it. An axe such as this still, or the Fiskars X27, you're talking about 70 quid for a real good axe. And a log splitter, you're going to pay considerably more. So yes, it is expensive. There's cheap log splitters out there. Don't buy them. You can get something for a couple of £100. A lot of the smaller ones are tiny. You end up sitting on your knees, hunched away over with your back, and there's absolutely no enjoyment in them. You'd be better off with an axe. So in my opinion, yes, a log splitter is expensive. You can't buy a cheap log splitter if you want it to be an improvement, an enjoyable upgrade. But you don't need to spend the earth either. The likes of this splitter that I'm using, I have cut just about everything with this, from wood that has been lying for over 10 years, twisty apple, eucalyptus, from the hardest stuff to really twisty, knotty softwoods, and I have yet to see this thing stuck. It's up nice and high, so you don't have to be stooped out over and breaking your back to use it. Now, I did do a few upgrades to it, but for the money in the UK today, I don't think you'll be able to beat it. So realistically, if you're serious about your firewood and you're thinking about a hydraulic log splitter, and you're asking yourself the question, should I buy a hydraulic log splitter? You really need to anticipate that to buy a hydraulic log splitter, it's going to cost you about 2,200 quid. I simply wouldn't recommend anything cheaper than that I know of currently in the market here in the UK and Ireland. Is the hydraulic log splitter more enjoyable? Yes. Is a hydraulic log splitter more expensive? Yes. 70 quid, 2,200 quid. But before you just close the video and give it a thumbs down, let me very quickly talk about the next point. Is it economical? Just because it costs more to buy initially, and it's an expensive outright purchase, that doesn't mean that it's not economical, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy one. If you look at buying a log splitter the way you would look at buying any other large purchase, does it then become a bit more economical. So this next section is going to contain quite a bit of maths. And really I think this is the whole most important bit. I think it's pretty obvious to just about anybody. There's going to come a stage where a hydraulic log splitter is going to pay for itself. So let's do a few sums and see if we can work out just where exactly that is. And if you're trying to justify this to your wife, you can't argue with the numbers. Okay, so there's a few figures that we need to just sort of cover and agree on in order to do these sums. So the first one is obviously the purchase price of the splitter. And we've already covered that, 2,200 quid. And I expect a quality splitter like this to last for about 25 years. So 2,200 quid divided by the 25 years, that's £88 a year. That's just to buy the machine. Obviously we need to factor in maintenance to that. I anticipate that every year there's going to be, let's say, a spark plug at £5, let's say an oil change at £5, and we'll say £5 for grease. That's 15. We'll probably change the whole hydraulic oil every 5 years. That'll cost 50 quid. So that gives us about £25 a year for the maintenance of this. So if we add that to the 88, that's 113 pounds that the splitter costs us every year. So the next thing then is obviously the fuel cost. So I know that the splitter uses a litre of fuel to split 1.5 cubic meters. And here a litre of fuel is about £1.53. Look at that there, boy. She is the yoke. Okay, so we've got our machine cost, got our maintenance cost, we've got our fuel cost. Now we need to sort of factor that into actually how much wood I burn. So if I burn a cube a week from October time to March, that's 24 cube. That 24 cube will take me 16 hours to split. And those 16 hours is going to cost me £24.48. So if I add on the total cost, the £113 that we worked out for the machine and the maintenance, that works out at £137.48. Oh yeah, boy, yeah. I can then divide that total cost by the 24 cube that I use, and we'll get a figure of £5.73. So the Hartnett splitter, this hydraulic splitter that we're talking about here, it cost me £5.73 to split a cubic meter of logs. So to be really fair, to make this a fair comparison to buying logs, we really need to factor in cutting the logs as well as splitting them, so sawing them up. I would say probably of all the logs that I get, it's actually under half of them that would need cut up. But we'll just assume, for the sake of the calculations here, that it takes the same amount of time to to saw the logs as it does to split them. I think that's a fair way of working out the sums. And of course the first thing again is we'll need a suitable saw. Homeowner saw, something like the Stihl MS 251. It's about 510 pounds. Something like that would be absolutely perfect for this kind of work. And of course, because it's a Stihl, it'll last forever. But you mightn't buy a Stihl, so we'll assume that whatever saw you buy will last 25 years. So £510, divide that by the 25 years and we get a price there of £20 and 40 pence per year. And again, we need to add in for the maintenance and the servicing. I'm going to account for about another £25. I think that's fair. £25 a year for servicing. So we've got £20 and 40 and another £25. So that gives us £45.40 a year for the saw, and obviously then we need to add in the fuel. The fuel for your saw is obviously going to be 2-stroke, so it's not the straight £1.53. You've also got to add in a wee bit for your 2-stroke oil. So that works out about £1.80 a litre. Total cost of about £3.69. So if we add those two prices together, £3.69 for sawing up the logs and the £5.73 for splitting, that's giving me a price of £9.42 per cube to saw and split. Locally here, the going rate for a cube of wood is, I'm just talking averages here, alright? I'm not starting to get into all different species and all that. We're just talking very generally. So a cube of wood around here is around about £110 for a cube. If you were to go and buy it, saw, split, in a bag, ready to burn. So with this machine and with a decent Stihl saw, I'm actually saving £100 on a cube of firewood. Of course, if you're not really like me and maybe you don't love working with wood, you're probably sitting there shouting at the screen, "What about your time?" And yeah, I'll admit it, I don't really account for the time in this. I see it as enjoyable time. This is something I find relaxing, therapeutic, something I can do at the weekends after a long day at work and absolutely love it. But in the interest of science, let's think about time. So I'm going to say my time is worth £15 an hour. And we know that it takes me an hour to saw 1.5 cube, and it takes another hour to split that 1.5 cube. So for 30 quid, I get 1.5 cube cut and split. So that means a cube costs me £20 an hour on labour. So if you add in that $9.42 that we were talking about for the saw and the splitter costs, that's $29.42 for every cubic metre that I end up with. So you can round that up, pretty much 30 quid. So it's about £10 a cube if I don't count for my time, and it's about £30 a cube if I am counting for my time. Of course, the next question that you're probably already thinking is, well, where are you getting your wood from? How much is your wood costing? So I get my wood from various places. Some comes from customers' jobs. Some comes from other tree guys that I help out from time to time. Some comes from neighbours' gardens in the dead of night. Am I joking? National Trust has better trees than your neighbours. Get an electric chainsaw, less noise. Just to keep the thing fair, and in case sometime I've run out of sticks and I still need to heat the house, The worst case is that you have to buy some. So over here you can buy a lorry load of logs, 26 ton, about 35 cube for 1,500 quid. It's 42.85 per cube. So if we add our wood purchase price of 42.85 to the saw and split price of 29.42, that gives us a total for buying the wood, sawing it up and splitting it of £72 27p per cubic metre. So about 73 quid. You're buying a cube for £110. That's saving you £37 and 73p on every cube. Let's face it, if you're only burning a cube or two, it's hardly really worth it. But if, like me, you're burning 24 cube in the year, well, 24 times 37, you're potentially saving a whole lot of money. So if I bought 24 cube and I'm paying £110, that's 2,640. If I buy a lorry load, saw it, split it myself, it's about 1,735. If I get them for free, it costs me 720 quid, and I've saved myself 1,920, saved myself almost £2,000 for having a hydraulic splitter. I totally appreciate that's an awful amount of miles. I wanted to put it all up on the screen here and just work through it slowly like that, because I think YouTube gives you extra points for showing all your working out. Nah, because I'm sure if there's somebody like me and you're trying to work out that decision, should you actually go ahead and buy a splitter, these are the kind of maths and calculations that you need to be doing. So I wanted to just run through it bit by bit there so that you can change the figures for yourself. Maybe if your life's more interesting, you've got more brains than me, you want £40 an hour for your time, and maybe in your area the cost of a cubic metre is significantly cheaper than here. But I think the easiest way to really understand all of this and really what it means for any of us is to put this into some kind of a graph. So what I've done is I have created a spreadsheet of exactly the calculations that we've just run through. And I've done the calculations over and over again, from 2 cube to 4 cube, right up to about 30 cube. And that gives us a really good idea of just how much it's costing per cubic metre, depending on the volume of logs that you're actually splitting and burning. I've done two here. I've included time and I've done it without the time, so depending on how you feel about splitting logs, if it's something you really enjoy or if it's something that you're purely doing to save yourself money, you can look at the relevant graph. It's going to show you how many cube you need to be burning and splitting before it actually makes financial sense for you to buy a log splitter.
The first graph here is the costs or the savings, excluding the time cost. So we don't have that £15 per hour labour charge that we were talking about earlier. We'll have that on a second graph. We'll go through that in a minute, but this is just the raw basic costs and savings for per cubic metre. So you can see along the bottom there's 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. That is the volume in cubic metres of logs that you're burning or that you're buying. Up the left hand side then vertically you see the 0, 10, 40, 60. That is the amount in pounds sterling. So that's either the cost or the amount saved, depending on which of the lines we're looking at. So you can see the key at the bottom there. We've got a blue line, an orange line and a grey line, the three thick lines that we are on the graph. So the blue line is the first one. That's the actual physical cost. So those are the figures that we worked out when we did our miles there. So just the raw cost that it cost me in terms of the splitter, the maintenance, the fuel for it and all that sort of stuff, factored against the cubic meter. So you can see that cost drops down fairly significantly to about 5 or 6 cube there. Then the orange is the saving. So we knew from earlier in the video there, we covered that locally here, if I go and buy a cubic meter of logs, it's about £110 to get a log, sawed up, split, served to you in a bag, ready to burn. So I've got £110 in there, and so that's our savings. So you can see there at 10 cube, you're saving somewhere around £90 per cube. The grey line then is the total saving. So how much money you're saving if you have to buy your logs. So that was where we were talking worst case, you have to go and buy a lorry load of logs. So with an extra cost in there of 43 quid or so it was. So you can see that line is pretty much the same as the orange line, but it's just bumps down by the 43 quid. So that's kind of like your worst case line is the grey line. So that's probably the one to focus on. Worst case, the most expensive circumstance, excluding time, is that you have to go and actually buy a lorry load of logs and split them up in order to get your firewood. So you can see there, if you look at about 6, you can see it's sitting there at about 40 quid. So at 6 cubic meters per year, I'm saving £40, 240 quid per year. Which, when you think about it, at a splitter costing £2,200, you've actually just paid for the splitter in a little under 10 years. So that's probably my bottom end. Looking at this graph, that would be my kind of gut feeling recommendation. I wouldn't really want to be buying a splitter at that kind of money, and it to be taking any longer than sort of 10 years for it to have paid for itself. So really, if this is you and you're looking at this graph, anywhere below about 6 cube, I would say you're probably better off just either using the axe or buying your logs already split. For me, just while we're at the graph, you can see that I actually burn about 24 cube in the year. So that's pretty much £100 saving. So on each cube. So 24 times £100 saving is £2,400 I'm saving myself. I get my logs for free. So you can see for me, this splitter has actually paid for itself in the very first year. So that's pretty unbelievable. So look at this graph. See whereabouts you are along the bottom in terms of the volume that you use. And then you look at either the orange line, if you're getting your logs for free or they're coming off your own property, or you can look at the grey line if you're having to buy logs, and you can make the decision for yourself if you think that you're saving enough money per cube that it really justifies going out and buying a splitter. For me, it's the 10-year thing. I don't think I would want to go over 10 years, so that comes out to be round about the 6 cube mark. So if you're burning less than 6 cube, I would forget about it unless it's just something, a real toy to you and you really fancy it. If you're regularly burning and buying over 6 cube currently, or you're splitting it with an axe, yeah, you should go and get yourself a hydraulic log splitter and have a lot more fun, do it a lot quicker, free yourself up a bit of time, and it makes financial sense. This is the more or less exact same thing, only here we're including the labour cost, so the £15 per hour. So you can see everything has jumped down a wee bit. We're not saving just as much money here. Again, the orange line is if we were just comparing it to going out and buying the logs ready to burn, coming in a bag. And the grey line is buying the lorry load of logs. So it's the grey line really is our worst case. And I suppose for me, it's working out around about the 8 cube mark. It's sitting up about £25 a cube saving, which it doesn't sound like much, but when you multiply 25 by the 8 cube that you're using in the year, that's £200 that you've saved, which means that the splitter's paying for itself in about 11 years. So that's probably, if you're really going to be including your time cost, and this is purely a cost saving exercise, you're not really into splitting wood, it's not something that you're absolutely mad about, well, I wouldn't want to be using any less than 8 cube in the year. It's really if you're on towards 10 cube, At 10 cube there, you're saving pretty much 30 quid per cube, so that's 300 quid in the year, and you have the splitter paid for in about 7 years. So that, to me, if this is purely a cost saving exercise, you get no enjoyment whatsoever out of splitting logs. You're just trying to find out what is the most economical way of buying logs and using them for your house. Well, really, I think you'd be better rounding it up to 10 cube. If you're using over 10 cube, then yep, go on ahead, you should definitely buy a hydraulic splitter.
So in conclusion, if you enjoy splitting wood and you burn or use any more than about 6 cube in the year, you definitely should buy a hydraulic log splitter. And if you don't really enjoy splitting wood, but you hate spending money even more, then really I would say about 10 cube. If you're burning any more than about 10 cube in the year, then you also should buy a hydraulic log splitter.
But keep your axe for opening your chocolate bars. Thank you very much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.